The late afternoon sun streamed through the dusty glass panes of the roadside diner, painting streaks of gold across the checkered tile floor. The air inside smelled like coffee, old leather, and the memory of too many fried breakfasts. Most of the patrons sat quietly, eyes on their plates or out the windows, going through the familiar, unspoken rituals of small-town life. In the corner booth, by the window with the cracked open 24/7 sticker, sat Maria Alvarez. Her army jacket hung from her shoulders like it belonged there, wrinkled, faded, and decorated with stories only a few people would ever understand. Her face wore no makeup, only the marks of time, grit, and one scar on her temple that seemed to whisper, "Ask me how I got this, if you dare." She didn't need pity, and she wasn't looking for conversation. Just her coffee, a warm breakfast, and the quiet hum of a place that didn't ask too many questions. Her wheelchair was part of her now. The loss of her leg, clean, just above the knee, wasn't something she hid or even thought about much anymore. That had happened 2 years ago, somewhere in a dusty corner of the world that rarely made the news anymore. She had stopped hoping people would understand what it meant to wake up in a body that used to run into fire and now couldn't even feel the ground under one foot. The bell above the door jingled, sharp and sudden, slicing through the calm. In walked 3 women dressed in matching black leather vests. Their boots were loud against the floor, not because of the soles, but because they wanted them to be. Tattoos snaked down their arms and necks. One had a chain for a belt, another wore mirrored sunglasses indoors like she had something to hide. The air shifted as they entered, like everyone in the room held their breath at once. They didn't scan the room to look for a place to sit. They scanned the room to see who was watching. And when their eyes landed on Maria, everything about their posture changed. One of them, tall and broad with frizzy red hair tied up high, grinned and said loudly, "Well, what do we have here?" Maria didn't respond. She stirred her coffee slowly, eyes on the ripples in the cup. "Hey, soldier girl," the redhead pressed on, stepping closer. "You lose a leg or just leave it somewhere on the battlefield?" Her 2 friends laughed. Not a normal laugh, one of those ugly, performative laughs people use to boost their own cowardice. Maria didn't flinch. She didn't shift in her chair or look up. That silence was deliberate. It wasn't weakness, it was calculation. The redhead walked up to her table and leaned in. "Did you get a medal for surviving or just a free ride to the pity parade?" Maria looked up then. Slowly. Calmly. Her eyes were tired but sharp. She said, "I got a medal for carrying 3 of my brothers out of a burning convoy after taking shrapnel to the spine." "What did you get? A matching vest and a bad haircut?" The air snapped. The 2 other bikers blinked like they weren't sure whether to laugh or throw a punch. "Say that again," the redhead growled. Maria stared straight into her eyes. "You heard me." The biker's fist came down hard, not on Maria, but on the edge of her tray, sending her plate and cup flying onto the floor. Porcelain shattered. The diner went quiet again. Even the fry cook peeked out over the counter with wide eyes. One of the bikers muttered, "Come on, man. She's in a wheelchair." The redhead didn't back down. That didn't stop her from running her mouth, did it? Maria didn't move. Her hands stayed in her lap, calm as ever. The bell above the diner door jingled again. This time, 3 men walked in. Not loud. Not dressed in anything flashy. They wore worn-out jeans, plain boots, and jackets with the faint tan of old military gear. The lead one, tall with a buzz cut and jaw like a brick wall, scanned the room like someone who didn't need to ask who was causing the problem. He walked over to Maria, nodded, and said, "Sarge. You all right?" Maria smirked faintly.
Took you long enough? One of the bikers looked between them. Who the hell are you?
The man stepped forward, casually tugging the edge of his jacket to reveal a patch.
Not a biker emblem, not a brand. Just an eagle, globe, and anchor. United States Marine Corps. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't puff his chest. He said, calmly and evenly, "We're her family."
The room grew tenser than it had been all day.
Not because of threats, but because of certainty.
The kind of certainty that makes grown men put down their fists and rethink their decisions. The redhead scoffed.
Family? You serious?
One of the other Marines spoke up. She's more than family.
She's the reason I got to come home to mine. Maria rolled her eyes. You guys are dramatic.
The tallest Marine leaned in a little toward the redhead.
You're gonna pick up the mess you made. You're going to apologize. And you're going to leave.
The biker hesitated, but the shift was visible. She wasn't the predator in this room anymore.
That became clear the moment these three walked in.
People like her bullies only held power when no one stood up to them. And now they were outnumbered in a way that had nothing to do with heads and everything to do with backbone.
They left. No fight. No last word.
Just the doorbell jingling behind them and the sound of chairs creaking as people started breathing again. The waitress brought Maria a new plate and said quietly, "No charge, ma'am."
Thank you for your service. Maria just nodded, cut into her eggs, and said to the Marines, "You boys gonna sit, or just stand there looking pretty?" They laughed. Sat down.
Riley, the tall one, handed her a small envelope. "What's this?" she asked.
Invitation. Unit reunion next month.
We figured we'd make it official. Maria looked down at the envelope for a long second before sliding it into her jacket pocket. "Thanks," she said.
"But next time, bring better coffee." They laughed again. And the diner, slowly, went back to being just a diner.
The kind of place where nothing happens. Until it does. The booth felt warmer now, not just from the sun shifting angles, but from the presence of people who actually knew her, not the polite "thank you for your service" types, but the kind who had bled beside her, who had seen her fall and still saluted her. She hadn't seen Riley or Mason in over a year, and Ramirez had just returned stateside last month. The fact that they showed up like that, no warning, no fanfare, just walked into that diner like it was any other mission, it tugged at something in Maria's chest she hadn't felt in a while. Gratitude. She wouldn't say it out loud. She didn't have to. They sat around her like it was any regular Tuesday. Laughing, teasing her about her new taste in diner food, dropping little updates about their kids, jobs, and how much worse civilian life felt without field rations and shared misery. It wasn't the same as war, but it was a little pocket of belonging. And for someone like Maria, that was rarer than gold. Across the diner, the waitress, Cheryl, maybe 30, soft-spoken with tired eyes and 2 pens tucked into her messy bun, refilled their coffees without being asked. Her hands trembled a little, not out of fear, but maybe from adrenaline still washing off. Maria could tell. That energy when something crazy happens, and the aftermath feels louder than the event itself. "I've never seen anything like that," Cheryl whispered to Maria while pouring. "The way they just backed off, it was like you flipped a switch." Maria shook her head. "They weren't scared of me. They were scared of the fact they were seen." Cheryl blinked, confused. "Bullies only feel powerful when they think nobody's going to step in," Maria explained. "Once someone does, they lose their grip. It doesn't take a battalion, just one person standing up." She smiled gently at the waitress.
Next time, maybe that'll be you.
Cheryl's eyes widened, but she nodded slowly, like something inside her clicked into place.
The Marines didn't stay long.
They had a few more hours before they needed to be in the next town, and they left like they always did: quick hugs, awkward goodbyes, a promise to text more that none of them would probably keep. That's how it was with soldiers. The connection never faded, but life scattered them like ash in the wind.
Still, when it mattered, they showed up. Always.
When Maria was alone again, the weight of silence returned, but this time, it didn't feel so heavy. She sat quietly for a moment, looking out the window. Across the road, she saw the biker women lingering near their bikes, huddled together, pretending not to notice when people stared at them. She could have waved.
She didn't. Some lessons don't need lectures.
Back inside the diner, people slowly went back to their routines.
Forks clinked.
Soft chatter resumed. It was like a reset button had been hit, and everything settled back into place.
But Maria knew better. Things didn't just go back. They changed.
And sometimes, a single moment, one table being flipped, one insult thrown, one group of people standing up, was enough to remind a town of who they were. Or who they could be. Later that afternoon, as she rolled out of the diner and across the parking lot toward her truck, she heard someone call out. It was Cheryl, the waitress, holding out a to-go cup.
Black, 1 sugar. On the house. Thought you might need it on the road, she said.
Maria took the cup and gave her a small, almost amused nod.
You always give free coffee to troublemakers? Cheryl smiled. Only the kind that make things better.
As Maria drove off, a country station playing low in the background, her fingers rested on the envelope Riley gave her.
She hadn't opened it yet. Didn't need to.
She already knew what it was: a reminder that family wasn't just blood or name. It was the people who showed up. Whether you were walking on 2 legs or rolling on wheels, what mattered was who had your back when the noise started.
Maria wasn't just a veteran. She wasn't just a woman in a chair.
She was a symbol, quietly, stubbornly, unwilling to let the world forget what it meant to serve and still be strong long after the war ended. And now, in a dusty town along Route 66, she had left a mark far deeper than her tires on the gravel. She had reminded everyone what real strength looks like. Maria kept her eyes on the road, hands firm on the steering wheel. The sun had dropped behind the ridges, and shadows stretched long across the 2-lane highway. Her old Chevy pickup made that familiar soft groan every few miles, like it was clearing its throat. But it ran, and it ran steady, like her.
Beat up, sure.
A little rusty.
But dependable.
The to-go cup from Cheryl sat snugly in the holder beside her Deershift, half full and still warm.
She didn't drink it right away.
Just held on to it with a sort of quiet appreciation.
Small kindnesses meant more to her now than medals ever did.
The reunion envelope was still in her jacket pocket, untouched. She could feel it there, pressing against her ribs like a heartbeat she didn't ask for. She knew what it was before Riley handed it over.
A formal invite to the unit's 10-year gathering.
All the survivors, widows, maybe a few kids of the ones who didn't make it.
Speeches. Photos. Bad hotel coffee. Good intentions.
She wasn't sure if she was ready. Not because she didn't want to see them, no, that wasn't it.
It was because of who wouldn't be there.
Faces she still saw in her dreams.
Names that weren't spoken out loud anymore.
And part of her felt guilty walking into any celebration when those names weren't on the guest list. She reached her little trailer outside of town just before dusk. It wasn't much, a tin-roofed single-wide parked beside a dry, cracked field and a fence line that leaned like it was tired of holding itself up. But it was hers. Paid for in full, no mortgage, no landlord, just peace. Her dog, Tango, came racing up the dirt path as she pulled in, tail wagging like a windshield wiper on high. "Hey, soldier," Maria called softly as she lowered herself out of the truck and into the chair. Tango ran circles around her, nose sniffing for any leftover bacon from the diner. Inside, the walls were lined with old pictures. Some of her mom, long gone. Some of her and her sister as kids. But most were of her unit, gritty, sunburned faces posing beside tanks, laughing in dusty helmets, flipping off the camera in the middle of chaos. Her old life frozen in a frame, back when she still had both legs and thought the worst thing she'd ever feel was a sandstorm in Fallujah. She wheeled herself to the small table beside the window, took the envelope out of her jacket, and stared at it under the soft yellow light of the kitchen lamp. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Pretend she hadn't seen it. But that wasn't who she was. Maria tore it open slowly. Inside was the formal letter, a schedule of events, a list of names confirmed to attend, and a small handwritten note at the bottom. "It's not a party without you. Riley." She didn't cry. Not because she wasn't moved. But because she had done her crying already. Years ago, in hospital rooms, at military funerals, in bathrooms with the sink running so no one would hear. No, this feeling wasn't sadness. It was something deeper. Like warmth and ache wrapped together. She thought back to the diner earlier that day. The faces of those biker women. The smugness, the mockery, the way their eyes shifted when the Marines walked in. That change, that instant gut check. She'd seen it in war zones, too, when bullies realized their power only went as far as people's fear let it. The moment someone stood taller, or stood at all, in whatever way they could, it shifted the whole battlefield. Maria had lived her life on those shifts. She poured a little dry food into Tango's bowl and rolled out onto her porch. The stars were coming out, one by one, lazy and unbothered by the mess of human things down below. She remembered what it felt like to lie on her stomach in the desert, rifle pressed against her shoulder, listening for movement in the dark. She remembered the taste of MRE coffee. The smell of burned tires and adrenaline. The screams. The laughter. The silence afterward. But more than anything, she remembered who she was before the chair. And then she looked down at herself. She wasn't less. She was more. Not because of the chair, but because of what it forced her to become. Stronger. Sharper. Softer, in some ways. Kinder, maybe. Her patience had thickened, like old scar tissue. But her will? That was forged in something harder than fire. She looked at the envelope again. She would go. Not for the speeches or the food or the old uniforms. She would go for the ones who couldn't. She would go because she knew there might be someone in that room, barely holding it together, pretending like civilian life didn't feel like suffocating in slow motion. And maybe seeing her, just her, sitting in her chair with her stubborn fire still lit, maybe that would be enough for them to breathe again. The next morning, she woke early. Tango barked at the sunrise like it owed him something. Maria smiled, rolled herself into the kitchen, and brewed a fresh pot. She hadn't dreamed that night. That was rare. No sand. No gunfire. Just sleep. She took it as a sign. Later that afternoon, she drove back into town for supplies. At the hardware store, a teenage boy held the door open for her, eyes wide, uncertain. "You don't have to treat me like glass," she said gently.
He blinked, awkward. Sorry, I didn't mean. She waved him off. Just talk to me like you would anyone else.
The chair's not fragile.
Neither am I. That was the thing about people. They didn't always mean harm. Sometimes they just didn't know.
And if no one taught them, if no one like her ever showed them, they'd go their whole lives guessing wrong. She picked up a few things.
New oil for the truck. A can of paint for the porch rail.
A bottle of bourbon she hadn't touched since last Christmas.
She thought maybe she'd take it with her to the reunion.
Share a toast.
Say a name out loud that deserved to be remembered.
Back at the trailer, the sky rolled with thunderclouds in the distance, but the ground stayed dry. Maria watched the storm build for hours and never break.